Everybody sit down. Thank you. We'll go around the room, have the members identify themselves. Mayor, go ahead.
And if you would, make sure your mics are on, showing green, otherwise it doesn't pick up on the web.
Leanne Redden, RTA, representing MPO Policy Committee.
Carl Larson, Mary Schaumburg, representing Northwest Cook.
Carolyn Schofield, representing McHenry County.
Rita Athens, representing Chicago.
Jerry Bennett, representing Southwest Cook.
Joe Zabo, CMAP staff.
Andrew Madigan, representing the City of Chicago.
John Noak, representing Will County.
Matt Brawley, representing Kane and Kendall.
Tarzan Prang, representing the City of Chicago.
Matt Walsh, representing West Cook County.
And on the phone we have Mayor.
Bronco Coladipietro, representing DuPage County.
Thank you. All right, before you minutes of the previous meeting, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So, second.
You know what, I got one edit.
So moved in
the
second.
minutes?
Questions? Yes.
Yes, sorry. I just have one edit just to add that I was on the call.
We
in
will
attendance
definitely put that in the minutes.
Thanks.
No further questions. All those in favor signify by voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed, voting no. Motion carries. Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The updates for the local technical assistance program is in your packets. And other announcements, just wanted to let you know that I'm wrapping up the final meetings with the COG directors this month. Had a little bit of trouble between my schedule and others getting McHenry's schedule, but set to get out there later this month, and that will complete the rounds. So we'll have that closed up. On the dues collection, as of last week, we've collected better than 99% of our total dollar amount billed, 100% with the transit agencies, 100% with the counties, at about 97.5% from the municipalities. So we're down to the very end, giving each one of the board members the list that has the final stragglers on there. So any help that you can give is greatly appreciated, but this will be the last month that I'll be bothering you with that. Also wanted to announce that the City of Chicago had their new mobility task force that was chaired by former DOT Secretary, my former boss, Ray LaHood. Task force completed its work, and CMAP, myself and Liz Shue and others were happy to participate and be a part of that effort. And the goal now is for CMAP to build upon that work. The city's report was city-centric, and our intent now is to take a regional view of new mobility and the steps and recommendations that need to take place now in the region. And so we will be looking to kick that off in the next couple of months and build upon the good work that the City of Chicago has done. Did do a meet and greet last month with the new IDOT Secretary, Omer Osman. Also gave us an opportunity to share CMAP's priority as the new administration is beginning to discuss a capital bill. And as a part of that, CMAP has hosted meetings with a broad cross-section of transportation partners discussing the shared needs and what we believe are core principles that should be a part of any capital bill. And the goal is to generate a strong consensus throughout not just the region, but hopefully throughout the state, and make sure that everybody is speaking with a strong, unified voice. So some good progress there. Also was contacted last week by Mayor-elect Lightfoot's transition team for CMAP's assistance, looking for some policy support, particularly in the area of neighborhood economic growth. And so pledged to them any and all help that they need in a smooth transition. And lastly, want to let you know that we're starting to generate what we're calling a committee newsletter that will be emailed to all committee and board members. It will cover the topics that were discussed at working committee meetings and preview topics that are going to be discussed at future meetings. This was requested by committee chairs to help keep them informed of the good work that other committees are doing, It will go out each month to coincide with our regular board meetings on again, a monthly basis, except for those times when the board is on break. But we will still provide the written committee summary each month for the board. And Mr. Chairman, that is my report.
Thank you. Any questions of Joe on his report? If not, we'll move on to the contracts and procurements. Angela?
Good morning, Chairman, CMAP Board. I'm requesting approval for 4 procurements today. The first one is approval for contract amendment of scope and time. I'm sorry, for project management services with Cressa. They will provide project management oversight for our move to the post office. The second one is contract approval for IT to purchase hardware, software, and related services for our VX Rail system with Dell, and its primary use is to manage our virtual management servers and our storage system. Third item, I'm seeking contract approval to purchase 40 PCs with Lenovo. That's our provider of our PCs here at the agency. And the fourth one is contract approval for the Illinois International Port District Master Plan to have that contract awarded to Cambridge Systematics. So I'm seeking the board approval for all 4 procurements.
Any questions on any of those contracts? The chair will entertain that we accept all 4 of the procurements. Is there a motion? Moved
Second.
and seconded. Any questions? If not, all in favor, signify by a vote of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, voted no. Motion carries. Thanks, Angela.
Thank you.
Under the committee reports, Frank?
Yeah, the coordinating committee met this morning, and just as a reminder, the coordinating committee consists of some board members as well as the chairs of all the working committees. And we reviewed the Unified Work Program for 2020 and approved it, and the board will take action on it at a subsequent meeting. We also heard a presentation on regional data scan and traded industry clusters, which is a more detailed work than was in the 2050 plan, and it outlines a series of ideas and strategies that we might be using to promote region-wide traded industry clusters. And finally, Mark Van Kerkhoff, who is the chair of the Land Use and Housing Committee, presented on how that committee is launching and what its priorities are for 2019 as they put forward.
Good. Any questions of Frank? Thank you. Under the LTA program, under item number 7, Stephanie?
Good morning, Chairman and board members. I'm here to talk to you this morning about our LTA FY20 project group. So at CMAP, we're always excited about bringing more capacity to the region, and we think that all of the projects that we're recommending to you today will absolutely do that. So I'm going to go over a little bit of the process on how we got here and then give you a couple of highlights of some of the projects that are in the packet. So our call for projects this year, we made an effort to coordinate that with the Onto 2050 launch. And so it was a little bit later in the year, so we did that right around October. And as always, we do our call for projects in conjunction with the RTA and their community planning program. And I believe Leanne is going to have an update for us today too on sort of where they're at with their projects. But it's always been a great partnership. It means that the communities can come to both agencies looking for resources, and we can really identify what is the best agency for meeting those community needs. So we had a really good response to our call for projects this year. We had 74 applications come in from 66 different applicants. Another thing just to note is with regards to our high need and highest need communities, 35% of those applications came from those communities. We did a lot of effort to really do some outreach to those areas. We did some new things this year, including following up on our municipal survey where communities asked for assistance. Tony Mano, who I apologize, I forgot to introduce at the beginning. Tony Mano is senior planner, and he's the one who really led the entire call for projects and is the one who's responsible for all the information in your packets this morning. So I apologize for Tony personally reached out to all of those communities that said that they were interested in getting assistance from CMAP and encouraged them to apply and also helped them through that application process if need be. We also did something else new this year where we worked with the Chicago Community Trust and had a special workshop just for nonprofit organizations. In the city of Chicago, most of our applications actually come from nonprofits, and so we really wanted to have a workshop that was very focused to their particular needs. It was very well received. We had nonprofits who have gone through the process previously sort of talk about their experience, and it was a really good way of peer-to-peer questions and answers from the different organizations, and we got a number of applications through that as well. So we're really good, happy with the responses, but then, of course, the next element is, oops, wow.
Holy cow.
That was okay, so I guess my presentation
Fast
is
report.
done. Yeah. That went way, let me just.
I didn't tell you to move ahead.
I mean, I know that I present fast.
Advance button probably sticking.
All right. Just in case it does that again. Little clicker likes to. So then it was time to evaluate. So as we'd like to, obviously, we'd love to serve all of the applications and serve all of the communities, but we did need to evaluate the projects that came in. We looked as far as what their alignment was with Onto 2050. We wanted to make sure we had a variety of project types, geographic distribution, and also obviously had to look at staff expertise and staff's availability. And then community need, as I mentioned, serving our high and highest need communities is a priority. So we looked at that, as well as another thing that we looked at this year was opportunities to collaborate with other parts of the agency. So how can we work with policy and programming to try to help inform their work and vice versa. So we gathered input from all the working committees, from our transit providers, the transit agencies, the county development directors, DPD, and CDOT. So we took all of that and scored all of the applications. Another thing we did that was new this year was really trying to involve the staff. And so we had a workshop where the staff really came in and looked at these projects and evaluated as far as what they saw in them, as far as what they think they could advance onto 2050. So with that, then we came up with 17 traditional LTA projects that we are recommending that we work on for 2020. Those are your traditional comprehensive plans, land use plans, and the light corridor plans. But we all wanted to try something else new this year, which was we have 12 alternative support efforts. We got such a good response for these applications, and we really wanted to try to serve as many communities as possible. And so these 12 projects are ones which are not your traditional plans, so they're not the heavy sort of 2-year project, but there's something where there's a lighter lift, there's something that the staff can do to really just help these organizations get over the hump. And we think this is a way that we can really spread out the resources of CMAP and help more communities. So I'm just going to highlight, you have in your packets a detailed sort of summary of each one of the projects that are being recommended, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of them just to give you a flavor of what the projects are like this year. The first one I want to talk about is Elevated Chicago. So with this one, we're working in partnership with the RTA on this project, and we would create a TOD, a Transit-Oriented Development Plan, for one of their station areas that they've already been looking at. And we'll focus on access improvements and pedestrian mobility to those stations. But the other interesting thing about working with Elevated and RTA on this project is we want to make it not just about the one station that we're going to highlight with this project, but we want to create a guidebook that Elevated can use to do this at all of their stations. So again, a lot of this is about how do we take our resources and be able to augment that with other partners to be able to carry that ball forward. So that'll be a 2-part project that we think will have a lot of long-standing impact. The next one I want to talk about is Will County. So this is a comprehensive freight, transportation, and land use project. So this really truly is where land use and transportation intersect. We're talking about how do we utilize the transportation network in Will County, how do we look at how that currently works with the land use in the area, but how can we give them recommendations on how to enhance that, both with their transportation network and with their land uses. This is an area that's Elwood and Joliet yet is really where the subject area is concentrated on. But the exciting thing about that is that it dovetails with a project that our policy team is working on, where they're specifically looking at freight transportation. So they're doing a freight transportation study in a much larger area in Will County, but this is going to do sort of a deep dive on the land use. And we're hoping this is something that then can be modeled throughout the entire freight planning area. Thank you, Tony. So the next thing I want to highlight is two of our alternative support. So like I said, this is something where we really felt that CMAP could help these organizations, but maybe not in a full-blown traditional plan. In some ways, maybe it was something where it's really a little outside of what CMAP's skill set is as far as helping those communities. And sometimes it was just a matter of they need a little bit more guidance before they can get to a point where CMAP can help them with their project. So the two that I want to highlight today are, first is Blacks and Green, which is a nonprofit organization in Woodlawn. This organization really concentrates on how sustainability and implementing energy efficient uses into a neighborhood can really help sustain a neighborhood and help draw jobs to a neighborhood. So this group has a lot of passion. They really have a lot of great ideas, and what we're proposing is to really be a partner convener. So how can we connect this organization with different organizations throughout the region that can really help them meet their goals and objectives? And then the second one is the McHenry County Agricultural Resources Guide. So this is really where we learned a lot, as you know, when we did On to 2050 as an all web-based plan. That was a big challenge that the agency took on, and I believe did very successfully. If you've seen Tina Smith from our communications department give the presentation, I think at a couple board meetings ago, on all the tools that are in that website, it's a really great use. We want to share that knowledge. So how can we, again, help these organizations learn how to communicate their ideas better? And so we would be working with them to provide some subject matter expert assistance in how can they build their guide so that it's user-friendly and model that off of the On to 2050 website plan. So what happens next? We are really looking forward to getting a deeper dive on all of these projects, developing full scopes of work for them, assigning project managers, getting budgets together, and having that all together for the board's consideration with the budget. But first, we need your approval to do that. So staff is asking for approval of the recommended FY20 project group.
I'll entertain a motion, and then we'll have some questions. And seconded. Questions regarding it? I guess my first question is that, I mean, I love the diversity of projects, both demographically and geographically. The variety of the types of projects are excellent. I guess the question to the board members, not you necessarily, Steph, is how can we do better? You know, we have 70 applications, only 17 projects, about how we can go out somewhere, someplace to procure money, additional monies, to help our region. Obviously, money has always been a question, right, Frank, from day one? Show me the money. And you know, this agency does such a great job with a talented staff and the accomplishments of so many projects about how can we go out and try to get more money. As we were blessed when we first started the agency and get $3.5 million from the Fed. There's got to be an effort somewhere, someplace that we go out, Joe, and try to get some more money to help these communities. It's a dynamic program every year, but obviously, as we've probably all gotten calls from our sub areas about towns that unfortunately couldn't get a grant or didn't make the grade, so to speak. And I hate to see them go die in the vine. That project's still out there, and sometimes maybe they lose a little enthusiasm and don't come back and reapply again for for a type of project. So the question has never been to me about what we can do. It's how can we financially support more going forward. And for example, this 17, what's the budget for this?
So we'll have that more detail when we get to the board meeting, but it is a substantial investment. But Mr. Chairman, I agree that we're trying to do as much as we can with the funding that we have. There's always more that we can do, but I think the alternative support is one way that we're really trying to make those dollars go farther and make sure that it's not just a project in one location, but how can we replicate that project in other places. But absolutely, there's a big need.
And as we talk about a legislative agenda downstate, I mean, everybody's talking about capital, both horizontal and vertical, but before you can do those things, you need planning, and that has got to be embedded in some minds down there of allocation of monies for the initial stage, and that's the planning stage for eventually people to come down and say, hey, I've got a specific project now to complete, so, anyway, we'll take that up when Gordon comes up.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman, I just absolutely agree. I think this is one of the best programs we have. I think it's a perfect example of how locals in this agency can work together to be more effective. And I commend the staff for saying it's a substantial amount, but in reality, though, the other direction is for the amount of money that's being spent on this effort, the amount of money that potentially will be saved, and the amount of impact, positive impact for the region. This is a modest investment, so I couldn't agree with you more that more money could be utilized here, and this is probably one of the best efforts we can continue to invest in.
Mayor?
I know you encourage communities that didn't get the grant this year to apply again next year. How many grants this year, or how many applications this year were from grants
Previous
that they applied
years?
for last year that, and were any of those awarded grants this year?
I don't believe so, but I'll look into that a little bit further.
I mean, do people normally go ahead and reapply, or is it just?
They have, yes, they have, and what we try to do when we offer this, like when the next call for project will open, for example, we would encourage people to call us ahead of time and talk through their previous application, and we try to give them as much feedback as we can on ways to strengthen their application. A lot of times our advice is to partner with their neighboring communities on a larger project, if it's, say, for a bike plan, and those have been successful. I want to say that maybe Bartlett and or Streamwood have applied in the past to us, but this year they both applied for bike plans independently of each other, and our suggestion to them was that they partner, and they both thought it was a great idea, so that's one example where that has happened.
The only other thing is great that they put out a program in the city for the nonprofits. I think in the future going forward, it'd be great to take that outside the city as well, especially as those agencies are continuing to evolve in their own development and their own cooperation in the suburban areas, and actually in their coordination with their counterparts in the city as well. Be happy to help with that effort in any way I can.
I just had one question for staff on this. You know how for transportation projects we build out sometimes a 5-year plan for what we plan on doing. Is there any thought to doing that for the LTA programs so that you can plan for when you'll have your planning accomplished in your community? I don't know if there's any value to that, but it's just something I was thinking.
No, that's a great point, and something that I'm working with staff right now on in the planning department since I got here is to really think about what is our 5-year plan moving forward, and so that's going to really show itself in our next call for projects. And so, very good point, and I would take some help in this. We are looking to expand our forums next year and really go out into the entire region and do more, not just one education on what it is that CMAP can do to help communities, because a lot of communities, unless they've been through the program before, maybe don't realize that we're here as a resource, but also try to get more of that collaboration. Even if CMAP is not able to have a project awarded because of resources or the like, I think that having more stories like the one that Tony just told of 2 communities coming together, and maybe between the 2 of them they have the resources to take on a plan, if we can connect those dots. And so yeah, those forums are going to be a way for us to do that and to have that 5-year plan sort of convey that out to the communities.
And one of the strengths in putting together the 5-year plan is it really does allow us to think through some of the things that we would really like to do and like to accomplish but don't have the resources to do today, and set us up in a stronger position to seek the philanthropic help. So it's part of the conversation we had yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I can just also add to that, I think the coordination that we do across the 2 agencies has been really fruitful for all of us. The outreach that we do, and to your point, Mayor, about sort of leveraging more resources. I mean, the RTA is going to be funding, we took it to our board, the 9 projects that we're doing this year. Additionally, we do early consultative support and additional support. To give some examples, the way we sometimes stretch the resources too is a county, actually a couple of municipalities came to us with some ideas, but it was more, and we take more of the transit focus, the TOD planning and the transit focus projects, but they weren't really ripe for a project, and so we partnered them with Metra, for example, and sort of sit down, spend the next year or so working through some of those logistics, expending our own agency resources to then tee it up for potentially either a project that either gets funded through one of these avenues, or maybe even just becomes something, an initiative that one of the service boards take on. So I think that coordinated effort and sort of stretching our resources is really sort of becoming more fruitful for all of us too. So.
Yeah, just one last comment on the Black and Green project, for example, in Chicago. That's really a microcosm of what a lot of suburban areas, smaller communities would love to see on retention and/or economic development in their communities. So, I mean, there's so many great samples out there, and the outreach that we take to our sub areas about going forward. And you may already have a model that they can use. Not that everything's perfect, but you know, you would have certainly some research, some core research that could assist in that. So, and it is. It's all about economic development.
Absolutely.
Comments? All those in favor signify by a vote of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, voted no. The motion carries. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're back up again
Yes.
on item 8, right, Steph?
Yes. So I'm here to give the board an update on our embedded staff planner program. Joe at the meeting a couple weeks ago or a couple times ago talked about the fact that we have started our program, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of update on what got us to this point and where we're going from here. So just to remind the board and the audience, so the embedded staff planner program is where CMAP staff will serve as temporary part-time staff planners in communities. We're doing this as part of a demonstration project where we had funding both from UWP funding as well as the MacArthur Foundation and the Chicago Community Trust to do a 3-year demonstration project, and we will go into 6 communities over those 3 years. And we will be embedding our CMAP staff in those communities for 2 years. At 3 days a week, really, of what kind of resources that we're giving them. We have a lot of hope for this project. One of the things that we heard throughout the ON2 2050 planning was there's a lot of great resources, there's a lot of great things going on in our region, but how do we connect that to the local level, and how do we give them the capacity to be able to take advantage of those things? So when we did look at our 2 communities, so the 2 communities that we are going into first, there again I said there'll be 6, but we have selected 2 of them at this point. The other 4 are to be determined. Are Calumet Park and Sauk Village. And so those are our first 2 communities. What we looked at as far as when we considered which communities to go into, we looked at their interest and need. First of all, we really want to make sure we're going into somewhere where they want us there. And so Joe and Dave Bennett from Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus and myself went down and met with the mayors of both Calumet Park and Sauk Village, and really had a conversation with those mayors about what it is that this program could bring to them, and really wanted to gauge their interest. And both those mayors were really excited about the opportunity of having CMAP staff come and assist their staff in really implementing their vision for those communities. So we looked at their need. We also looked at a bunch of different elements that you can see up on the screen. One of the big things was about the SSMMA communities. So SSMMA is the one who really came to us with this idea. It was part of our LTA program. They applied, and this was one of their applications, was for us to have staff support. And so we really felt it was important, as this was sort of where the idea came from, that we start with those communities. Also, just in general, that is where the communities with the highest need are in the region. So it did make sense to start there. Doesn't like me.
Temperamental.
Let me ask you a question. Why does politics fit into why we choose an aging community?
So I won't go back because it won't let me, but that was one of the points on there. One of the things we looked at was the mayoral cycles and the election cycles. We really met with the current mayors, but we didn't want to have a change in administration midway through, and so we really looked at what that election cycle was really what that comes into play.
Mayor, actually, I think it's a really important question. As we all know, in our sub-regions, those towns, politically instability that takes place, unfortunately, I've seen over the years a ton of resources, I don't want to use the word wasted, but go into a situation of a community and nothing is done. It's a political mess, and somebody else comes in and they're back to square one again. So I think it's real critical.
It's not seeing my... Sorry.
Need new batteries.
There it went, finally. Yeah, so if there's any, is there any other questions on what some of those factors were? You know, potential to show success. The two communities that we are going into first are ones who have already shown that they're really committed to a strong vision. They're both their mayor and their village boards are very committed to the plans that they already have in place. We actually, when I talk about what we've done so far, you know, they have been in our LTA program before. We've done comprehensive plans either in the process or completed with each of these communities. So we had an existing relationship. That was also something that was important.
And would you also, Stephanie, meet with the staff in those communities? Because obviously the working relationship between CMAP staff and the staff, the on-the-ground relationship is going to be extremely important.
Absolutely. So we really started the program in earnest in January. So in January is when I mentioned Joe and Dave Bennett and myself went and met with the mayors. Then immediately what we did is...
And staff were in every one of those initial meetings.
Yes, staff was in those meetings. And then we followed up immediately with meetings directly with the staff. So first we wanted to sort of make sure that the mayors were comfortable with what the proposal was and what we would be doing, and then followed up right away with who they felt were the key players in their staff. And I'll take this opportunity to introduce our first two embedded staff planners. So Patrick Day is in Calumet Park. He is the staff planner for Calumet Park for the next 2 years, and then Maggie Jar, who is the staff planner for Sauk Village. So that first staff meeting, it was also important that the planners that were going to be there with the staff was there. So that was a big part of that first meeting with staff, was really talking, introducing, making sure it was the right fit. I mean, again, you know, making sure that there was a good fit between their staff and our staff. So that all happened in February. Question?
I'm just curious as to what village staff or city staff are being appointed to do this. I think about those communities as being relatively small in terms of staff and that kind of thing, and wondering how much attention are you actually getting? How much transfer will there be? Knowledge transfer will there be in these experiences?
So that's a really great point, and that was something that when we did have our conversation with the mayors, we really wanted to stress is that, you know, we want to build their capacity, we don't want to be their capacity, and so making sure that they had that commitment to the staff, and it wasn't just, you know, sort of utilizing the staff while they're there. We want to be able to transcend their 2 years time there and be able to build that capacity. So at one community, it is the village administrator is the one who is our direct contact and the one that Patrick has been working with most. At the other one, it is their economic development director. So Maggie is working directly with the economic development director with Sauk Village to really make sure that, yes, we're adding to their capacity and their work and really fulfilling their vision. This isn't about CMAP coming in and sort of pushing our vision onto these communities. This is about us helping them achieve their visions. So in February, we met with staff, and then we also then met with the village boards and presented the idea to the village boards and got approval of a memorandum of understanding as far as setting the boundaries for what it is that staff would be doing. And then in March, the staff work began. So March, we've been there about 30 days. The two planners have been out in the communities, and really they've been just getting to know the staff, getting to know the community. I think they both got tours of all the fire departments and met all the fire chiefs and the police chiefs and got to meet the staff. But really being part and immersing themselves in these communities was really a big part of it, and making sure that they can really serve those communities as best they can. We've already had some big wins, and the idea is that and then over the next couple months, the planners themselves will be up here giving you presentations on what they've been doing. But we've already had some big wins in the first 30 days. So you know that CMAP has a pavement management program. Both of these communities were selected to participate in that program. However, we really needed somebody on the other end in those communities in order to get that program off the ground, and these planners have been able to do that. So being able to directly put them in the pipeline for CMAP resources already happened almost immediately upon them getting to the organization. And then Maggie Jar already put in a grant application through the Invest in Cook program. And interestingly enough, just a little bit about that project and that application, the Village thought that there was one particular project that was going to be the one they wanted to apply for. After Maggie connected them with a couple other resources, they realized that really that project was really being taken care of by another organization. So she quickly pivoted them to another project that was in their comprehensive plan that the residents really wanted to see and said, you know, this would be eligible. She put all that documentation together based on the comprehensive plan and submitted that application. So something that's really going to be an immediate impact for the residents and something that they want to see, because she was able to take that comprehensive plan and use that almost immediately. And then Patrick is already being invited to the department staff meetings because his input on the comprehensive plan that they're going through and really being able to translate some of the engineer speak that is going on with their stormwater planning to the staff has really been very vital in really helping the village understand, you know, sort of what their flooding issues are and how best to move those forward. So he's already been asked to be part of the department meetings on a regular basis. They already are seeing the value in his point of view. So over the next couple months, they will be working with those communities to develop action plans, so really very tailored, specific action plans, working with the village administrator, working with the economic development director on what they want to sort of make their first 6 months. They're going to be 6-month action plans. As all of you know, at a municipal level, things change really quickly, so it's really going to be sort of that quick sort of 6-month, what do we want to see, and then revisit that on a regular basis. So we, like I said, we will be before you again with even more, hopefully quick wins. But so far, it has been a great project, great process so far, and the planners are really making a difference already in the first 30 days.
Your final homework will be writing a report on both of those communities. And I say that only because those are the kind of things that can be shared with the South Suburban Mayors Managers Group in general, and or any other COG. So I think what you do, your work is important and critical, but in the final analysis, a report, a summary as to what has been accomplished, I think would go a long way in not necessarily eliminating duplicity, but certainly as a best case scenario situation for other towns. And by the way, the MWRD is a great asset. I'm sure you've been in touch with them with flooding. They've done remarkable things throughout the metro area. So. Has the fire chief and police chief dominated those meetings? Oh, okay, good.
And I just wanted to add on, I know I've said this before, but I think this is one of the most innovative and best projects that CMAP has put together, because it really, in a very, very tangible way, shows the type of work that's being done. I think it's great.
Can I add one thing? You mentioned a report. I'd say we should go beyond a report. We should actually put presentations together and make other communities aware of the results of this project, how it worked, what happened, you know, where the hiccups were, where the real benefits were, and that kind of thing, so that there's a shared learning that takes
So
place.
we think that we will learn as much out of this process as, you know, the expertise that we'll leave behind, that it really is a two-way street. So, no, I think valid point.
The simplest things about where are the resources out there. And I think a lot of towns are unaware of potentially a lot of resources, and that alone being passed on to the communities at large can go a long way, because they may not know. And obviously you took them in a couple of directions already that they had no idea that there was money available, as limited as it is out there, but every dollar counts. Great job, thanks.
It's great.
We're looking forward to reports going forward.
Yep.
Thanks, Steph. All right, moving on. Under the item 9, the Bridgeport Canaryville Planning Priorities Report. Noah?
Yeah.
Here we are.
He's going to learn from me and just go.
I think I might be best served to stick around up here. I'm not high enough ranking to have Tony on retainer to click my slides. Thank you, Chairman and the board, for letting me come today to talk about the Bridgeport and Canaryville Priorities Plan. This has really been my passion project for the last year or so, and I'm excited to share it with you. It's got a funky name. We've never done a priorities plan before. In 2017, the 11th Ward of Chicago and the 11th District of Cook County asked us to do a neighborhood plan for Bridgeport and Canaryville. We determined at the time it would be more appropriate to take a step back and put together a project that really looked at the future for them and determined which planning projects would be in their best interest to pursue next. So it's one of our smaller products that we offer. It's designed to just kind of take stock of the communities and give them an agenda moving forward to help them figure out where to prioritize their resources. Bridgeport and Canaryville are south side communities located just south of the Chicago River. The Stevenson and Orange Line kind of run across the north side of the study area, and it's bisected down the center by Halstead, which is really the spine of these two communities. They have a proud history as working class neighborhoods located right next to the stockyards. You can see that today. We even joke that the study area looks like a pipe wrench, and everyone that we talk to down there kind of wears that with a badge of honor. There's about 40,000 residents that live in these combined communities. It's got a long history and tradition of being sort of an Irish Catholic location on Chicago's south side, but today it's one of Chicago's most diverse and interesting communities. When we started this project, we decided to go into it with an asset-based approach. I'm a really big proponent for asset-based community development. I think it's a really interesting and useful way to have conversations with communities. For places like Bridgeport and Canaryville that are really proud of themselves and proud of their communities, this was also a good way to get to know people, to introduce ourselves as a planning organization, and to build community trust. So rather than going in with our community outreach and asking questions like, what are the problems that your communities face? What do you want to do differently? We led with questions like, why here? How long have you lived here? What was your decision to locate here? Or why did you stay? Some of the key community assets are the diversity of the communities. They're really starting to see that as a strength and use that to build a real legacy for these communities and to move forward. It's got really great transportation assets. Halstead runs right downtown. The Orange Line can get you downtown as well. Really good access to expressways, and you can get to Midway pretty quickly too. Parks and open space. Not very many people know that there's a fishing pond on the south side of Chicago. But if you go to Palmisano Park in the summer, you can cast the line. It's got really good housing options as well. It has been able to maintain relative affordability. The stock is really diverse. There's a lot of opportunities for people to buy their homes in Bridgeport and to stick around. But you can also go rent there if you're a student at nearby IIT or University of Chicago. So getting into those comments I made about diversity, you can see how much these communities have really changed over the last 30 years. In Gray in 1990, a strong majority of the population was white, over 60%. And you can see in 2015, it's nearly broken down into thirds with no specific demographic holding a majority. A lot of this is because neighboring communities, Chinatown and McKinley Park, have expanded their populations and become more or less built out. And a lot of them have relocated to Bridgeport and Canaryville, which is really a good thing. Getting into our conversation about some of the community assets, I think these two photos on this slide really show kind of the old Bridgeport and the new. You can see on the left there the Vienna Beef Factory store. The legacy of the stockyards is certainly still strong there, alive and well. But on the right, you have the Joby Art Center, which is a really fantastic art gallery that the Zhou brothers started when they immigrated from China a few decades ago. So it's a good look at all the different sort of portraits of Chicago that you'll get when you go into Bridgeport and Canaryville. I mentioned the transportation assets as well. Halstead really being the focal point, and it sort of served as the backbone of the future direction that we hope these communities will go in. On the left, you have the 31st Street bus crossing Halstead. It's one of a number of bus services that provide east and west access through the communities. And on the right, there's a cyclist on Halstead Street going northbound. I would bike to a lot of my meetings down there, and you can get here in 15 or 20 minutes or so. So it's a really good opportunity for young professionals living there that might be coming into the loop for work. The housing stock, as I mentioned as well, is one of the biggest assets of the communities. When we went into Bridgeport and Canaryville and started asking people about homes, a lot of the comments that we got were, oh, those are just sort of single-family homes. A lot of families relocate there. Many of Chicago's public servants have typically lived in Bridgeport and Canaryville. But once you start looking at the data, that's a little bit misleading. About 1/3 of homes in Bridgeport and Canaryville are single-family homes. So there's a lot of opportunities, for larger buildings. They don't have any of the sort of bigger high-rises, like 20-plus unit buildings, but there's a lot of different options for multi-family units. And it's a really good mix of owner and renter as well. It's just about 50-50. Right now, 45% of Bridgeport and Canaryville homes are owner occupied, so a pretty even mix and a lot of opportunities for people to sort of choose what best fits their current needs. So the planning process took a little over a year. We started last February and we published the final plan last month, which, by the way, thanks to other members of the project team, Stephen Ostrander and Heidi Prasad are here. We had a lot of help from one of our summer interns as well, Jared Jones. He had to go back to Florida State, of course. But if you take a look at the map, if you take a look at the plan, he put together an asset map that I think is a really interesting snapshot of the community and hopefully something that other plans kind of take a look at, just providing a quick look at everything that's going on. The main recommendation that we have for these communities is to pursue an economic corridor plan for Halsted Street. The majority of our outreach sort of led us to this point that if we could sort of just return Halsted to its former glory, that it would be it would do a lot of good for the communities and build a lot of momentum, filling vacancies, bringing restaurants and sort of services to the communities that may have been former shops that couldn't maintain themselves any longer after the stockyards sort of depopulated. But rather than just telling these communities that you need to do more planning, it was important for us to provide interim work items as well to really kind of harness the momentum that a planning process builds and give them something to work on. So we provided a handful of short-term recommendations. A lot of these are certain things that the Chamber of Commerce can do. It's served by the South Loop Chamber of Commerce, which is a little bit misleading. So one of the recommendations was that they change their name to something that's a little bit more appropriate for those communities. We also encourage them to put together an economic development liaison position that speaks Chinese and Spanish, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs that want to open businesses, that want to take advantage of the vacant storefronts, but they just don't necessarily understand how to go through the paperwork that entails to open a store in Chicago. And we think just a little bit of help to sort of bridge that information gap would go quite a long way. We were also able to secure funding for a Homes for a Changing Region project and an Urban Land Institute developer panel. So the Homes for a Changing Region panel is really going to focus on how you can preserve affordability in this community as you hopefully start to build economic development and make sure that these options that people have for living in the communities are maintained and continue to be available. The Urban Land Institute developer panel is something that we're working on right now. That will be coming later this summer. But we're hoping to put together a panel of experts that will probably look at the intersection of 35th and Halsted and kind of address some vacant storefronts over there and give the community some real advice, some frank advice as to what their most likely options are to fill those vacancies in the long term. Another thing that we recommended they do is really build a cohesive brand for the communities so that they can market themselves and show how unique they are. On the left here is the Ramova Theater. It's a beautiful old theater that's reminiscent of sort of the Davis Theater in Lincoln Square, except this one unfortunately is vacant. And we're hoping that economic development efforts can turn this around and really sort of show off the gem that really is for the communities. It's unfortunately been vacant for a few decades now. And then on the right, you have the Canaryville Welcome sign. It is a large example of community branding and marketing, but it's not necessarily consistent throughout Halsted Street. And if you kind of build on that streetscape and really create a unique character, it would go a long way for the communities. By the way, this is on Halsted northbound. If you're on Halsted coming southbound, there's a large Bridgeport sign as well. I think I flipped that, apologize. This is going south. If you're coming north, it welcomes you into Bridgeport. Just some lessons that we learned during this planning process. Clear communication regarding the scope is important throughout. When we were working with our stakeholders and elected officials, many of them have been introduced to CMAP's work through the Chinatown Community Vision Plan, which is an award-winning product that's quite a bit larger than what we were doing. So just communicating throughout that we're not going to be able to put together a document of that length that will have that detailed of recommendations, but focusing on the use of considering, or the value in considering these communities as a cohesive neighborhood, and providing them some resources so that they can make decisions and spend their resources wisely. Creative outreach is very useful as well. As I mentioned before, these communities haven't really undertaken planning processes recently, and they haven't been considered as a cohesive unit as well. So we wanted to do something to gather input and outreach that was a little bit unique, that let people get to know us, that people felt comfortable providing feedback as well. And as a project team, we decided that the best way to do this was just to have as many conversations as possible with individuals. So I've got some photos on an upcoming slide, but we did this at the Joby Arts Center that I mentioned before. I basically took every intern we had at the time last summer, and we had 6 tables set up with different maps that showed the assets of the community: transportation, housing, parks, and open space. And we just had everybody come to a table, make their way around the room, introduce themselves to an employee, speak with us, provide confidential input and feedback as to what kind of improvements they wanted to see with the community. It was really fun too. I got to meet a lot of people that you don't necessarily have that advantage when you're doing a larger presentation and doing keypad polling and things like that. And then lastly, near-term implementation items can really maintain momentum, which is so key. With projects like this and our planning priorities reports that we do, we've got one finishing up in Sandwich now as well. It can sometimes be difficult to bridge that gap between providing a recommendation and sort of waiting for the community to pursue those further planning projects, to go through those application materials. So having things like a Homes for a Changing Region panel or a developer panel, or just sort of interim work items that I mentioned with the Chamber of Commerce, those are things that are pretty easy for us to recommend to communities, because it's pretty obvious through our outreach that certain things can be taken advantage of. And it's also something that the communities can maintain that momentum and start to work in a positive direction. So here's some photos for that event that I was mentioning, all of the different tables that we had set up. It was a couple days after the outreach event that we sort of finished up tabulating all of our Post-it notes. So apologies to my coworkers who needed Post-its last July, because I think I took all of them down south. But it was a great opportunity to get to know people. And then when we were sending out updates too for the plan and sending out the final, the link to the final plan, it was nice because I was emailing people that I had met, that I knew, and when they responded to me, we could really kind of keep that conversation going. So next steps moving forward, Homes for a Changing Region is underway now. We kept the same steering committee for our plan that we're using with the Homes for a Changing Region panel. So when we went over the final plan, it was a really useful opportunity to have everybody in the same room and sort of hand the baton off and keep moving forward. The developer panel is coming this summer. It will probably be in July. Both of those projects will have reports that will be public, so keep your eyes peeled for those. I'm sure we'll make sure that those are circulated. And then an economic development corridor application. We expect them to likely return to LTA and fill out that application for the next round of projects that we undertake. But in short, it was a really great process. Things are happening, and we're hoping that we can continue to make things happen for these really interesting communities. There's a link to the final, link to the project website that has the final plan up there as well. And yeah, any comments or questions I'd be happy to take. Yeah.
No, another great project by CMAP, and I guess a couple questions. Gentrification of that area, is that become a stigma? Or is your research or analysis that's not true?
Yeah.
Or how did they get over that stigma?
I think the concern for that is alive and well, but it's not necessarily happening yet. You sort of see reverse demographic trends that I showed. It's becoming more diverse, whereas gentrified communities tend to move in the opposite direction. That was a big reason why we wanted to bring in the homes panel right away, is to kind of address those concerns before it gets too far down the track and before you can take actions to do so. So it's definitely on the mind of the elected officials and the community members down there. And we're hoping that we sort of struck at the right time as planners and can take some steps to prevent that from really becoming a problem.
You talk about development of Halsted Street, again, a microcosm of what goes on throughout the entire region with main streets. You know, how do you take that step to make that investment? Is it the current owners of those storefronts that don't want to invest anymore in their building? Do you bring in assistance, whether it's some type of grant, whether it's from Chicago or in the region, to assist them in redeveloping their property or changing their property or just, you know, upgrading and improving the property? That always seems to be a biggest problem. Everybody's got the great idea, well, you know, you could do this, but it takes, again, money to make that investment.
Yeah.
You know, survey the existing businesses there that the
Yeah.
properties are, you know, have not been brought up to code, or certainly to, you know, work with them, and, you know, and how can they make their storefront attractive?
Sure. Well, we're hoping that that's what ULI can help us kind of figure out. What we were able to do, and Heidi specifically did this, was analyzed a lot of CoStar data in the communities to figure out where residents are spending money outside and sort of what opportunities are being missed within the communities. You know, a lot of that services, restaurants and things like that are a typical response to the kind of mainstream problems that you were detailing. With the bigger economic corridor plan, we do recommend that they do quite a bit of surveying and just do a really big market analysis as well to understand what's going on there. But I'm assuming it'll probably ultimately be kind of a mix of things, of incentive programs and just understanding what types of businesses should be catered to and marketed toward the community to address those needs. Where people are already spending their money, they're just doing so elsewhere.
And again, how do you hand that off then to, on the economic development side? I mean, we have, again, agencies all over the place that are out there, whether it's, you know, attracting businesses to region, whether it's international or local.
Yeah.
That handoff, I think, is where a lot of things get lost sometimes.
Well, that's why we encourage them to come back to us for a more detailed economic development plan. We're staying involved with them throughout. With Homes for Changing Region and the ULI, we're kind of on board already, but we've encouraged them to run their application materials past us and to just stay in contact so that the product that they're requesting for their next planning project is something that's going to address the needs and really get to these questions that you're after. So, you know, it's not going to be a big part of my work moving forward, but I have sort of, you know, volunteered to be on board to the communities if they have any questions, just to make sure that what they're pursuing is going to answer those questions that we've sort of highlighted and identified for them to pursue.
Again, congratulations, it's a great project. Questions, comments? Thanks, Tom.
All right, thank you, everyone.
All right, we are moving on. Gordon.
Good morning. I'll be very brief today. So in your report, we just kind of highlight some of the deadlines that have been going on throughout the General Assembly. They've had committee deadlines, which means bills that have not been approved out of committee essentially die. And so you will see some of those bills move to the back page of the table. We are affectionately calling that the pet cemetery because they don't really die. And when they come back, they're just a little bit weirder than they were.
That's great, Gordon.
And so I thought about that one for a long time. But what you are seeing is our report expand and contract as bills miss their deadlines. We take them out of the report. But the General Assembly is always adding things, introducing new bills, making amendments to bills, and we are always looking at that through the lens of onto 2050 and the legislative framework and agenda that you all passed in February to ensure that it has relevance to the work that we are doing. And in that light, we are recommending to the board the support of one bill, House Bill 102, which provides non-home rule municipalities with the authority to raise local MFT for up to 3 cents per gallon. And so I'd like to get that out of the way, Mayor, if we can, discuss it or take a motion and.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, if you've been following General Assembly, there's a lot of, we always talk about home rule, not home rule. There's multiple bills downstate considering non-home rule communities. Also included in some of those bills, Anthony DeLuca is sponsoring a bill that would allow non-home rule communities to be able to implement without referendum sales tax, increase in sales tax up to 1% over 25% increments. A great bill for local government. Certainly, we, as they take away resources, meaning money, we have to have some ability to substitute that with other measures. So a discussion on, you're asking for support of the 3 cent. Questions or comments on that?
Is this by referendum or?
Yes, I believe so. Ordinance, yes.
Okay.
Again, do you sidestep the referendum deal?
Absolutely, with non-home rule communities, you know, our hands are tied, the motor fuel tax amount it keeps going down. There's gotta be some way we can fund our roads.
Is there a motion then?
I would so.
You have a lot of so moves.
Moved, is there a second? Second. Questions again, comments? All in favor, signify by a vote of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote of no, the motion carries.
Thank you. The only other thing I wanted to do is just give an update on just activity at the General Assembly. In the last couple of weeks, there have been a couple of infrastructure bills that have been introduced, one by Local 150 and another by the Illinois State Chamber. Both of those, in most people's opinion, are discussion starters. I'll say maybe a little bit of I don't want to say prodding of the governor, because there's been a little bit of, in most people's minds, a delay in having that discussion. But there are discussions that are ongoing. In fact, the governor started his infrastructure discussions with members of the General Assembly, I believe it was the week before last. And so we have been in contact with all of the caucuses, all of the caucus staffs. We are still trying to make contact with the governor's, I'll say, infrastructure guru, but we have been talking to their legislative teams. Again, talking about the principles that you all have approved throughout this spring session. And so we do anticipate providing testimony again at a Senate hearing, which will take place at the end of this month. Trying to figure out a date for this thing has just been kind of difficult, but we do know that it will take place in the region and we will be in attendance. And so that really kind of concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Just a couple brief comments. Metro Mayor's Caucus had met yesterday. We also got a legislative update as to what's going on with both the transportation bill and a capital bill. There is a separation, vertical, horizontal, and the latest is that we're sure, or they feel more confident about a transportation bill. However, the governor is also pushing at the same time a capital bill. Again, resources are the key to that. And Mayor, the other important thing about getting this legislation passed is one of the conversations they're having about a gasoline tax increase is possibly eliminating the sales tax off that, which would be a huge loss to local, well, certainly to us, and whether or not they would say, okay, we'll eliminate the state's portion of it, but keep the local sales tax under. So again, it's just another protective measure, and I hope that doesn't happen, because, or without a conversation with local government to the economic impact of losing sales tax off the gasoline, sales of gasoline. So, but anyway, the transportation bill, they think that they need to get something done in that area. The capital bill, again, is something being pushed by the governor on the vertical side of it for economic development. But again, in both of those measures, nobody's thrown out yet revenues where that money's going to come from. We talked, as Mayor Emanuel had talked about yesterday, and has talked about it before, that whatever they do to build in a cost of living on any increase going forward in gasoline tax, so we're not back at this 24-year period where we've now created a gap of inflation between then and now. So those are the kind of things that whether they wait till the end of the session, I don't see anything happen to, as usual, the last couple of weeks, and or carrying over into the veto session. But you had a question.
I just wanted to make a comment, because I noticed on House Bill 2525 on township consolidation, we did take a position which I completely agree with as to the reasons why, but I wanted to point out it actually conflicts with another bill that had gone through, House Bill 348, and it was specific to McHenry County. And I just think from a regional standpoint, it may not affect, you know, the entire region at this moment, but it was legislation written specifically for McHenry County, of which our board filed a resolution in opposition to this bill, and it passed through the House last week, I believe. So I just wanted to make everyone aware of the trend that this is setting of this legislation specific to counties without collaboration with that county. I find it a very frightening path to head down, and in that it's conflicting with other bills that are already being proposed too. It's not a good way of legislating, and I just wanted to express my concerns with that. I'm glad we're not supporting this bill on this one because we had the same concerns at the county. It was actually dissolving the townships into the county, and then county would have to take that on, and there were no studies or anything, so exactly the concerns you pointed out here were not provided in that bill either, so.
That's a problem with all the conversation on consolidation, which, you know, we certainly believe local government, that more can happen, but there's really been no studies. There has been really no approach other than we need to consolidate. We'll throw it all together, and it's certainly on the township level because of the services that are provided that are genuine, I think, and need to be considered. Where can you transfer that off, or other portions of service that may be different here in the metro area versus downstate? You know, states, if they're going to do it, they could possibly commission a real serious study as to how consolidation of township or eliminated township and/or those services can take place. But every year, somebody's going to throw, and it's usually politically, why they throw a bill out because of that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I can agree more again. As I've spoken in the past, consolidation, if we can find more cost-effective, more efficient, and more effective government and governance, is a good thing. But there's a lot of momentum to just jump into it for potentially political reasons or other reasons. And I've cautioned before that these services aren't just simply going to disappear. The needs for them often in many cases. So we have to be cautious about how we do it. And I agree with you. I think we need to have a more comprehensive look at the best ways to do this. And also look at ways that promote locals to come together to encourage them to do this from their own perspective. And eliminate some of the barriers that exist, and not only in townships, but many other forms of government. Today there are way too many barriers to consolidation and more effective governance. And
somebody's got to pick up the, you know, the role, so to speak, and it may not be that great. You look at the metropolitan area, and I know the county president has been trying to push to get rid of, you know, the unincorporated areas and have them absorbed locally, and, you know, many towns aren't in a position to do that, especially for police services, you know, without who's going to be compensated for that. So you look at health services, and most of the Cook County townships provide health service to seniors, and whether or not the counties can actually be picking up, when you talk about consolidation, how about absorption of some of the township areas to provide those type of services? But you're right, Mariette, the only way you're going to find that out is go locally and find out what kind of services individually these townships are providing, what kind of response, what kind of participation they have, and then the cost of those services. And then you start to drill down as to that township tax, what does it break down to as far as the services, if you're going to continue the cost of doing those services, and again, whether they could be absorbed by a municipality and or the county. And most of the roads in some of these, you know, some of these townships are down to 3 or 4 roads, you know, that they maintain, and why the county couldn't possibly pick those up. Again,
and that's a perfect example. You know, and each township is unique in its own way. You know, townships, some provide senior services, youth services, food pantries, some don't. And, you know, oftentimes in our area, we have many large subdivisions that are under township jurisdiction, and their roads and infrastructure. A municipality couldn't simply just pick those up without the investment that, or lagged maintenance that could potentially have occurred over decades. It would be impossible. It would be inhibitive to the municipality to provide to its own residents that have been paying into that system for a number of years.
And you know that too. I mean, when a town incorporates an area or allows a development to take place, there's infrastructure costs that are required of the developer to at least establish it. And then going forward, your ability to tax or provide you know, long-term financing for the maintenance of that too. So.
Can I just make one more comment, because in response to that too, is the exciting news is that there's actually an LTA program in McHenry County that is doing exactly what you said, in evaluating the services of the township and how shared services can be in collaboration with the municipalities, townships, other entities. So I think, I don't know the ending date on that project, but it will be exciting to see that report, as hopefully it will answer a lot of those questions.
Ultimately, effective consolidation has to come from the locals themselves. And where they are, and the barriers to doing that are removed at the state level. And potentially, you know, and I've said before too as well, is looking at innovative ways to refinance current capital debt and other barriers that prevent consolidation.
Other comments? Gordon, good luck. Like I said, we'll wait till the last 2 weeks. We'll wait till the last 2 weeks.
Good luck with your pets.
Yeah, with the pets. That was a great line. Okay, under other business, in general, I, without getting into specifics, we are moving along with the search for our new executive director. Josie, you're smiling. I guess you can't wait, huh?
Got an itch.
The intent of the committee is to come back with a recommendation, hopefully by our June meeting, if that's possible, and give an opportunity for at least a couple of months of a crossover. Joe stays on, but we are still moving ahead with that. It is moving forward, and I was absolutely impressed with the initial amount of applications, which was close to 70 or 75, Angela. So obviously, this continues to be an agency people would love to work for, and the legacy will continue as we move forward, and hopefully we will come, not hopefully, we will come back with, we believe, will be the best candidate going forward. So that's just a general update. More specifically, as we move along, or we will inform the board. Over to the public. I'm going to put you on a permanent agenda. How you like that? Good.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
One thing I wanted to bring up is about that sales tax. If we got rid of the sales tax, especially downstate, could you imagine how much trouble they would be in? They would lose a whole lot of services. And they may have to like borrow from Chicago or even St. Louis. St. Louis or even Iowa.
If you've been keeping up politically what's going on in the state, there's a group of state reps and senators downstate who want to create or dissolve or become another state of the union, cut us off from or be cut off from Chicago because they think that Chicago is all the money in the state of Illinois is draining to all the resources of revenues of the state are going to the Chicago area versus downstate, but it's not true. In fact speaks that the dollar we get less.
So the way that they were gonna make it like, it's like, let's say, so it would be like Cook to Page, Kane, Kankakee maybe, then I'd go away to Rockford and DeKalb, and then the rest of the state would be their own state.
Good luck.
It sounded like you wanted to call like our state Chicago.
Correct.
And the rest would be Illinois, like Chicago would be like from the lake all the way to DeKalb, down to Kankakee probably, right?
Well, they were talking about just Chicago, but I'm sure the metropolitan communities of CMAP would not want to be outside the Chicago boundaries.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sure if they took the entire
So if you
CMAP
just said
area,
Cook
they
County?
might not like the math.
I don't think so.
So it would be like Cook County only or something like
Well,
that?
they're proposing just Chicago, or Cook County, I guess, but I am sure that it's a political shot over the deck or something.
See, I can picture that happening to like the New York City area, like New York City itself, and then Long Island, and then the rest of, that's kind of like how probably New York feels, like, sort of like that.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing is that I support like public transit. So that's like the transit bill they were talking about?
Yeah, the transportation bill, obviously, they know that there needs to be a major component for rail. Yes.
It's comprehensive, multimodal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, can I was remiss in the new business section, or other business section, but at your place settings, and Heather gave me the segue, there is the notice about the Get On Board Day event that's RTA's leading in conjunction with the service boards and others, so we would encourage you to all participate. Pardon? Oh, okay.
Yeah, Garland-
Garland's gonna
Garland-
promote
Garland
it,
will let
okay.
you
He'll do a better job than I will
Yeah,
anyway, so.
as my wife said, and Leanne, thank you very much for this, because I think definitely we need definitely outreach to make sure that different disability organizations get this, because they have no idea about this idea, because this is time not only with the paratransit, but also for this too, so they can be a part of it too. And also too, me and my wife is heading down to Springfield tomorrow rallying, so we can make sure to get the whole state capitol bill on everything. So we're gonna try to do it for you, and if you have any suggestions for us to make sure we can take it down there, and if we see the governor up close, what you want us to do to make sure to ask the governor straightforward for y'all, and we will definitely do it for you, so we can make sure that every state will definitely have a state capitol bill. This is the time, the 21st century, it's long overdue, and there is no questions asked, and this is a must, because if other states can do it, so can we. So what's their excuse down there? I don't know, and what they're thinking of, now we need to nail it to them. Say, this is the time, or all of us have to nail it to them like sharks down there and say, all right, you lawmakers, we need a state capitol bill right now, whether they like it or not.
Thanks.
I'm gonna make you our lobbyist.
Hey, Gordon, watch out, will you? You know, or certainly bring them with you. And while you're down there, also asking for money for CMAP too, for planning, right? We'll give you a laundry list. No other business brought before the board. We, again, will meet in May. Executive Committee, we have a meeting right after this. No other comments, questions? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, signify in the usual manner. Motion carried, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Executive meeting here?